It's time again for Natural 2, our unscripted talk show about D&D and other tabletop topics. I'm James. With me is Nathan. And this time we're going to give you tips and advice for running a one-shot. And let me start out by saying that, in my opinion, what I'm bringing to the conversation here is that my preconceived notion was that one-shots being contained to one session, ideally, um, were easier. But my first piece of advice to you is that they are more difficult than a given session of a regular ongoing campaign.
Mhm. I'd fully agree with you. It's very deceptive. I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle overall with, like tabletop role-playing games, is pacing, and that is one of the biggest pillars in a one-shot is your pacing. And so if that's something that you don't have a lot of experience or weight behind in your normal game. It's gonna just show across the board in a one-shot, and that's when you start getting two shots, then three shots, and it's like, we've been doing this one shot for a month and a half now. But yeah, that's very accurate, and I think that's what a lot of people kind of discover when they're like, "Oh yeah, let's do a one shot next week," and it does not go according to plan.
The only time that I've ever actually had a one shot and completed it by the end of the night was when uh, we pushed it late and everybody was tired and ready to quit, and we were just rushing to the end so that we could say that we finished it without having like another 45 minutes to play some other night.
Hmm.
So I will say that is my first tip is it's going to take longer than you think, probably. Every group is different, but more than likely it's going to take longer than you think. So give yourself plenty of time, or maybe break it into two by default and make it a two shot,
Hmm.
just to give yourself that breathing room.
I think starting out at the beginning, talking about like what a one shot is somewhat applicable. Like it's kind of a broad term that can encapsulate a lot of different things. When I say one shot, like what kind of comes to my mind is like a 4 hour self-contained adventure session, like quest, whatever you want to call it. And the first thing that I think needs to be filtered through when you're like trying to do a one shot or planning for a one shot is it is fundamentally different from a lot of the advice that you would use and apply in a regular game. There are so many things that I would recommend if you're doing a regular D&D campaign that I would go, you cannot do that in a one shot. And the first thing is characters, like deep, meaningful, varied characters, because you can't include like whole little arcs or I guess like spotlights on every single character that all the players bring. There's just not enough time, right? Like the whole group has to be behind the idea that we are starting momentum going, we're going to get through everything we want to get through, and we're finishing at the end of the night. And there are so many pitfalls that people will stumble into that stand in the way of that. And that's like the first discussion that you should probably have with your group when doing a one shot is like, are you guys ready to like actually change the pace or adopt a different style? Because if not, we'll just run it loose and see how many sessions it takes. But if we do want to try and do it in one go, then we all have to kind of agree to, kind of change the goalposts a little bit. So I think that's always kind of the most essential thing when discussing this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the the crutches, let's say, not even crutches, but for lack of a better word, that you would lean on in an ongoing campaign where it kind of doesn't matter. You can just pick up wherever you last ended, or you can get the characters talking amongst themselves,
Hmm.
or you can have these meaningful roleplay conversations. That's kind of out the window
Hmm.
in a one shot. And be sure that a one shot is actually what you want to do. Like, be sure that
Hmm.
that's what you're going for, and that what you instead may not want is a just a short campaign. But we'll save that for another video. Um, in preparing to run a one shot, in my opinion, I think that it's best, especially if you don't have a lot of experience planning adventures or writing adventures, is to throw the plot out. Forget it. What I mean by that is motivations and lore and world building and all of that, those wonderful, wonderful things are going to be the reason that your one shot runs over
Mhm.
and you're sitting there 90 minutes after and people are checking their watches. So keep it simple. A bad guy wants to do a bad thing. The heroes want to stop him,
Yep.
have to stop him. The end. The rest is dressing.
Yeah, I have like one cut and dry successful one shot under my belt that I like actually would kind of give myself a little gold star for because like I felt like it actually ran as I intended it to run, which is a diamond in the rough or a needle in the haystack when it comes to D&D. And I think the essential preparation is pre-gaming the players. Like I went to the group or the players that were coming in and I was like, here's where we're starting, here's your character's motivation, here's the general like launch pad that we're going to be going off of, and then you just kind of react to whatever comes your way, and then we'll finish the story. It wasn't a matter of like, oh, well, you gotta figure out why your person's here and how they feel about it, and the dynamics they have with all the different characters. It's like that stuff is just it's a set dressing or the depth that we can't allow with this kind of thing. And you mentioned earlier that there's the crutches that you can't quite lean on that you usually do, and that was one that I had to very much kind of reel in for myself as I love just letting two characters kind of like get involved in something and discuss it and throw it back and forth and start like showcasing their player's personality or their character's personality. And it's like, yeah, if you're speaking for more than like 30 seconds, it's like, oh, we gotta go.
Yeah, don't have time for it.
Yeah, so I think the one thing I can kind of attribute a lot of my success to with that one shot is I made very clear sets or scenes, and I was like, here's the starting scene, here's the middle scene, here's the third scene, and here's the climax. And like really the only gray area was how one led into the next, which is a lot of what kind of D&D fundamentally is anyway. But there was no like, oh, well, they could go this route, or they could avoid this thing, or they could come up with a whole new plan that, goes around the intended path, because you can't really do that effectively. And so it was just a matter of putting the players in the scene, letting them figure it out, kind of have their input, having their solution, and then moving the pieces on the board until we got to the end. And it just went very smoothly, and everyone kind of had the, I guess, general approval or good review at the end of it. So that's all that the, I guess, goal of the DM is letting everyone have a good time. So that would be, I guess, my actual advice I would ship out to you is have pretty cut and dry, I guess scenes is the best term I can come up with on the fly of just like scene one, scene two, scene three, and then done. And that way you kind of can separate chunks of time out. Like if you have a 4 hour session, it's like the first hour is this, second hour is this. Maybe you leave like an hour and a half for the larger fight, and then you can check the clock, kind of push things or slow things down depending on how fast you're going, and great success at the end of the day, I suppose.
That was going to be the next thing that I said was that, and again, in my opinion, which is
No,
not to
it's
be
all
redundant,
objective facts.
but
Everything
yeah,
we say.
right. Um, and by the way, I think this applies whether you're writing something yourself or you're using an adventure that you've gotten from someone else or bought. Um, but the way you're talking about scenes, I think that's really useful because um, I think that you should be prepared as the DM based on how the group is doing to chop things out of the adventure on the fly.
Hmm.
And you have to really understand the adventure and really know where the turning points are in order to be able to do that effectively. But be prepared to say like, all right, there was a puzzle in this room, it's gone now. There's, maybe we can swap it out for a small fight, or it's just a trapped door, and that's it. making those changes on the fly, being able to improvise that stuff to speed things up if things are lagging. And I would also say, and respect to Sly Flourish, the lazy DM, because that's who gave where I got this piece of information from. I would encourage you to start in the action. This is the one time, like, it's not okay to start in the tavern. Don't start in the tavern. It's not, don't start back at the headquarters. Don't start in those normal places that you would think of. Pick up in the first fight of the night. Or something like that. The first encounter, whatever that happens to be. The characters are already together. They're already working together. You've already met. Forget all that stuff. It's over. Done already. You sit down, say, all right, we're going to play. Roll initiative. Start in the action. That will help to keep things from bogging down right at the beginning and sort of set the pace for the whole night. Hopefully.
Yeah, the Sly Flourish is an absolute treasure trove for D&D advice. Cannot recommend him enough. A lot of his like general mentality is just 10 out of 10. So I guess gentle shout out in his direction. But another thing that you probably want to try and put a fair amount of thought into whenever you're preparing a one shot or presenting it to your group is you want to make sure, I guess, like the theme or the energy or the mood or the vibe is very much expressed beforehand. We've had a couple different one-shots in our group run by a variety of our different players, and I think we've suffered before from not having a clear understanding of like what the intention of the game is before we sit down and play it. And that way people are bringing characters that don't quite fit. People are trying to, I guess, like go about solving the one-shot or the puzzle or the game in a way that wasn't really intended. And a lot of that could have been kind of solve beforehand. If you're like, we're doing a murder mystery, don't bring anybody that's like combat focused or opposed to, investigating things, or we're doing a dungeon crawl, so, don't bring a pacifist or, someone afraid of, tight spaces or something, right? Like, this is kind of surface level stuff, but broadly speaking, you want to make sure that if you're giving your characters the agency of bringing, or your players the agency of bringing their own characters, you want them to know what characters to bring that are appropriate so that you're not finding out that they're not appropriate halfway through your one shot where everything is kind of falling to pieces.
The mistake that I made, because in my opinion, I have yet to run a successful one shot. I've tried a few times, and it's always run long or had to been split into multiple sessions. Not ahead of time either. We're at the end of the night, and it's like, all right, I guess, do you guys want to finish this next week? Most recently, the mistake that I made was that I got it in my head that we could play in the world of Asmiliath, and so it would still matter to everyone. So we would be taking a break from the main campaign, but we're still playing in that world. We're fleshing it out. We're playing with some of the ancient history, and I was trying to have it both ways, and that is why it was doomed at the very beginning. Because as much as I wanted to keep it to one session and finish at the end of the night, I had all these grand plans for what the pace was going to be like. I still ended up having like kind of drawn out character conversations, and it set the expectation for the players to bring characters that were going to be recurring. They were going to be seen again, so now they're developing their personalities, because the idea was that it would be like these one-off adventures, but the characters would return. It would be sort of like movies instead of a series. And that wasn't, it didn't work. And the other issue was that adventure didn't have all the things that I could have chopped out, and it still made sense, were at the beginning of the night. So by the time we were running long and I needed to speed things up, there was nothing left I could cut. everything that was left was vital to get to the end of the campaign, to the end of the adventure. So learn from my mistakes.
I think a through line with all the different things we're kind of touching upon is, at least from my perspective, a one shot requires a lot more like openness and communication between the DM and the players as far as like the actual game. Because in a regular D&D game, there's almost this amount of ignorant bliss that the player wants to stay in because they want to feel immersed in the world and they want to have all the surprise be actually like surprising and all this kind of stuff, which you don't really have the luxury of when you do a one shot. Like, you're not playing a one shot to have this grand reveal or this, deep character moment or this, fantastic multi-layered, red yarn interjecting kind of conspiracy thing kind of be unraveled. You're playing it to have a very short, condensed, focused bit of fun that you don't have to prepare for to a huge extent and you don't have to worry about for, weeks or months after the fact, right? So you need to approach it with, I need you to be on the same page and you need me to be on the same page. So a lot of this obscurity that we usually kind of have between us, we got to bash that down so we can have a good time and not stumble over each other. So that's one thing that I think not a lot of DMs and players are kind of used to, because it's very different from the kind of standard operating procedure. That is something you might want to try and force yourself to do a little bit. If you find yourself in this scenario, treat it more like playing a board game or a card game where everyone knows the rules, everyone knows the general rotation of things, whose turn it is, and that kind of stuff, so that it's a lot more open and can move a bit smoother.
Cards on the table, if it sounds like I'm kind of down on one shots, it's because I am.
Was that an intended pun?
It's I'm not gonna respond to that. The it is not. I've learned after a few attempts from either side of the table, it's not my preferred way to play. The things that I enjoy most about tabletop role-playing games are really muted in the one-shot experience. So I really think that for me, what the one-shot is for, or when to do a one-shot, is to introduce new players to the rules, or to give your DM a break, something like that. Or if you are going on, you have some kind of special occasion and you're going to have a group together that doesn't normally get to play, that's what that would be for, in my opinion. Again, that's why you would do a one shot. So again, for me, if you are thinking of a one shot, make sure that you don't want a short campaign instead, because that's what I realized I wanted at the time.
I think it's pretty safe to say that, at least for our group and like kind of how we prefer playing, one shots are kind of an inferior way of playing beneath our normal kind of, I guess, campaigns or whatever we're actively doing. And that's not a bad thing. And I'm not saying that every group hates one shots or it's not for your group. It very much can be. But there are pros and cons to it. And a lot of the things that we enjoy are kind of missing from that. The one caveat I want to stick on is our Ismiliath campaign, which kind of kickstarted our whole group, wasn't really a one shot in the beginning, but I very much like had a very short adventure that could have been done in one session. And that's all the expectations I had. And then once it started going well and people wanted to play more, we just kind of kept adding. And I see that story kind of coming up a lot with like the various forums and Reddit and that kind of thing of, oh, we were playing, Minds of Fandelver or whatever pre-made adventure, like whatever that they were going to do for a one shot, like a birthday party or something, and now they've been playing for 5+ years, right? And they just keep adding on modules and different campaigns and that kind of thing. And so if you're running a one shot like that, where you're kind of open to it continuing after the fact, it's very different from the conversation of, we are playing a one shot. That is, nothing more, nothing less. This is what it is. And so I think you're just talking about those one shots in that very specific category. There's just a lot of things you have to surrender to do it effectively, and I would never choose that over playing D&D in my preferred way. But there are good use cases for it, like you mentioned, like new players and that kind of thing. So if you are doing it for one of those reasons, then it's best to have a little bit of advice and a better mentality for it when you are trying to do it.
The last thing that I would add onto that is it could also be a good palate cleanser if you take the opportunity. It would be a good time to try a setting that you aren't already playing in or haven't played before.
New system.
A new system, sure. Encourage the players, if they're part of your normal group, to get out of their comfort zone and do characters they haven't already done 100 times. Um, and just try to mix things up, try to get a different angle on the usual game. Use the opportunity for permission to screw up or to make a mess. Because when it's over, it's probably over anyway. So there won't be a better opportunity to try that thing that you've always been thinking about, but weren't willing to inflict on your regular campaign.
I think my little cherry on top before we kind of wrap it all up, it's a little bit, I guess, revealing your hand before you even sit down to play the game or plan the game. But as a DM preparing one shots, I think it's a safe bet that you should always plan for the party, the heroes, the group, whatever, to succeed with great flair and success. Like, one shots are not the place to teach your players a lesson or to have them end with like a bitter success. Like, when you're sitting down for a one shot, slay the dragon at the end, save the princess, free the city, like whatever the main goal was, have them just succeed and let that be the ending. Have them get their jovial, I guess, flaunting at the end and going over all the cool things they did and how that wacky plan actually worked, and like that is the goal of the one shot. Like, there's not a lot more, there's not a deeper philosophy there of like, oh, I'm reinforcing a bad behavior or I'm setting a bad precedent. This is a very self-contained little universe you can play in. And with that kind of guiding your perspective, just let them do it. Let them have the fun, and you can also bask in that glory as a DM, and then just move on from there. I think that's probably the best way to approach it.
If there was ever a time for unquestioning application of the rule of cool,
Yeah.
it's in the one shot.
You probably will have that one player that's like, oh, but when we played that one shot in there, you let me do this, and so I was relying on that to make my move, and then yeah.
Well, you can't base too much off that player, or you'll drive yourself crazy. As always, let us know down below your good or bad experiences in one shots. Maybe the names of the favorite pre-written adventures that you like to run. Goodness knows there's a whole world of them out there. Or things that you think that we missed or that we just have wrong. Put in the comments.
Yes, I think, but there's a good chance that we are wrong, so sharing your disagreements is always welcome.
It's a public forum. It's the public square that we're in for the new millennium. Dislike or like and subscribe. Either way, we want you to stick around.
And I need to get better at plugging my stuff, so if you're looking for maps for your one-shot, I make maps. I'll put the link down below. The vast majority of them are free, so you can't shake a stick at free.
If any of those map making videos, if you watch those time lapses and think to yourself, man, that's a good looking map, go get it.
Add it to your game, no shame.
Yeah, absolutely. That nothing will shave prep time off that one shot like finding some pre-made maps to go with it.
Oh yeah, don't get me started on prep time and maps. I could go on about that for a long time.
Sounds like another video topic. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time.
Have a good one.